Hey, so it's been a whole year since I decided to turn CAPTCHAs into a video game, and a lot has happened. I went from a random guy with no games under my belt to a full-time game dev with no games under my belt. And to celebrate this 1-year anniversary, let me tell you the story of exactly how I got here. Let's go back to a year ago when I just graduated college and it was time to get a job. I always had an obsession with coding, so naturally, I wanted to be a web developer and make cool websites. Long story short, after sending hundreds of applications into the void, I decided to just stop and hire myself as a game developer. Making my own game has always been a childhood dream, so I thought it was the perfect time to give it a shot. Now that I'm technically employed, the first step was coming up with a game idea. Guys, hear me out. What if I make an RPG where you fly a spaceship to smuggle alcohol for aliens? For a while, I felt like nothing really clicked, but then what if I turn CAPTCHAs into a game? And I don't just mean the vanilla reCAPTCHA stuff. I would be designing my own premium CAPTCHAs. I was instantly hooked by the idea. Like, I knew I had the opportunity to do the funniest thing, and I had to take it. Now that I have a game idea, it was time for some prototypes. I started with something simple, recreating the infamous checkbox CAPTCHA. I experimented with a few different art styles, and this was the design I landed with. I went for the pixel art style because it easily hides the fact that I'm stealing Google's intellectual property. I went for the pixel art style because I think the blocky look really fits the comedic tone of the game. At this point, I was ready to turn the design into an actual functioning CAPTCHA, so I picked up Unity and started coding. A real checkbox CAPTCHA actually checks a lot of things, like how you moved your mouse, what accounts you're logged into, and what websites have you been on. So to faithfully recreate all of that, I'm checking whether you clicked in the checkbox. I don't know what you're expecting. This is a video game. So with my first CAPTCHA done, I moved on to the more complicated squares CAPTCHA, which asks you to select all squares with traffic lights or some other objects. It wasn't too hard to make since it was basically a bunch of toggle switches that needs to be checked against an answer key. I also made a few variants of the squares CAPTCHA, which just force you to click more and more squares for the truly immersive CAPTCHA experience. With a few CAPTCHAs in my hand, I decided to make my first YouTube video. When I decided to become an indie game dev, I knew I wanted to pick up YouTube. It would be a great way to document my journey, tell people about my game, and sink hundreds of hours into animating stick figures. So I created the YouTube channel Linternet User. Many of you probably still wonder what Linternet actually means. Does he use Linux? Does he like lint? It's actually a lot simpler. I'm Lin, and I use the internet. Like and subscribe. Anyways, in July of last year, I posted my very first video to YouTube. And within just 1 week, the video reached 109 views. And I'm pretty sure like 60 of them were from my friends. Wait, play it again, play it again. But hey, I have 13 complete strangers. 10 complete strangers supporting me, which wasn't a bad start. My original plan for my game Captcha Hell was as simple as it gets. It was just gonna have a white background with a series of my premium CAPTCHAs. Solve all of them and you win. This wasn't a bad scope for a first game, but I was doing some research and it turns out I wasn't the first or even the second person to come up with a CAPTCHA game idea. For example, here's a CAPTCHA game by EtherDelta called The CAPTCHA Game, released before I even had the idea. I felt really discouraged at the time because I thought I was making something new. For a second, I even considered scrapping the entire project because I don't want my game to be seen as a clone of another game. But then I realized that similar games aren't necessarily a bad thing. Well, unless you're making another AAA shooter, in which case, good luck. I mean, Stardew Valley was inspired by the core gameplay of the Harvest Moon series. And by adding its own unique mechanics Harvest Moon never had, it became one of the most popular indie games of all time. So to make my game truly unique, all I had to do was add a small twist to my original concept. Instead of the CAPTCHAs just on a white background, what if I put them on an actual website? And what if I then put the website inside a browser? And the browser inside an operating system? this little maneuver is gonna cost us 51 years. So basically, the plan was to turn Captcha Hell into a desktop simulator, which would allow me to introduce additional mechanics, as well as a full story arc. I quickly sketched out what the desktop interface should look like, but then I wasn't sure whether I should commit. On one hand, the desktop simulator concept makes a much more interesting game. On the other hand though, that game would take much longer to make, and the scope is getting dangerously big. What ultimately gave me the confidence was all of you guys. While I was still deciding the best path forward, my YouTube channel started taking off. I went from having 13 supporters to over 2,000, a number I thought I was never gonna reach at the time. So I figured if so many people are already rooting for it, then I might as well go all in and make the best version of Captcha Hell. After making the decision, I started building the fake operating system. I have quite a few apps planned, but mostly I focused on the message app and the browser. The message app is where most of the game's dialogue happens, and the browser is obviously where all the captchas are going to be. Or is it? Anyways, I also ran into an interesting problem where all my existing captchas won't fit inside the new browser UI. And because you can't just scale pixel art, my only option was to manually adjust the layout of every captcha. Luckily, I didn't have a whole lot of them at the time, and ultimately it was a small price to pay for the course change. So the next few months mostly went into getting the desktop interface right and making more captcha puzzles. I was juggling between working on the game and making more YouTube videos, and my subscribers steadily grew to around 30,000. So by January, I decided it was time to get serious and make a Steam page for Captcha Hell. I signed up for Steam's developer program, and after filling out a ton of paperwork and some captchas, I was in. I immediately jumped to making the actual store page, which ended up taking over a month. Among other things, I had to make a trailer, 5 screenshots, and some capsule art. What didn't help was my game looked kinda rough at the time, so I had to spend a ton of time polishing it just for the screenshots and the trailer. Eventually though, I was able to get everything ready, and the final step was waiting for Steam's approval. I was a little worried they might question whether I'm harvesting data with the captchas, but my Steam page was approved without any incident. Little did they know, I am harvesting data with the captcha. My Steam page went live, and it felt like a huge milestone. Even though I still have a long road ahead of me, the game is now official. What's even better is that in just a few days, I somehow managed to collect 5,000 wishlists, which is just one letter away from beating Subnautica 2. And if everyone watching this video wishes Captcha Hell, we will beat Subnautica 2. After the initial excitement of launching the Steam page has passed, I once again went back to working on the game. During this time, I designed my own pixel art font for Captcha Hell, which was actually quite fun, so let me know in the comments if I should make a video about it. I've also been slowly chipping away at the dialogues and the story, and I finally had a draft screenplay for the entire game. I'm not gonna spoil it, but the story will have 5 sections, with each one giving a unique spin to the Captcha gameplay. I'm aiming for something similar to There's No Game, which is one of my favorite games and a big inspiration for Captcha Hell. The rest of the time went into designing more funny captchas, and the game was coming along quite well, until the end of June, where the biggest moment of the entire year happened. I was checking my Steam wishlist numbers one day, and my wishlist just exploded out of nowhere. I still don't fully understand the chain of events, but I was suddenly getting attention from the press. It's actually pretty common for indie devs to reach out to the press around big milestones, like during a Steam page launch. So of course when I launched my Steam page, I didn't reach out to anyone, cause I didn't feel ready at the time and thought nobody would respond. So in theory, nobody should know about my game yet, but everyone just started covering it all at once. Like here's a game news channel posting my trailer and getting a terrifying number of views. And here's a major Japanese gaming news outlet just casually writing an article about it. I don't really know what to say to all of it, like thank you, genuinely. And this brings us to today where Captcha Hell sits above 50k wishlists, which is one letter away from beating Subnautica 2 10 times. Not gonna lie, the imposter syndrome is starting to show itself. Like, nobody knew who I am just a year ago, and now there's 50,000 people that I don't really want to let down. But on the flip side, all the support I'm getting from everyone has given me a lot of hope and motivation to do my best. So thank you. In any case, I'll make sure There's No Game stays an inspiration and not an outcome. And I'll see you next time.